It's not a whole lot explained. This is part of the gobbledygook that all good sci-fi has, where it's not explained, it just sort of works. Welcome to I Read This Book with Chris. This is Chris. This is the book by Dennis E. Taylor. We Are Legion. And while discussing We Are Legion, I have chai latte. So, We Are Legion, We Are Bob by Dennis E. Taylor. This book might surprise some people, might surprise me. It is very modern. This book was originally published in 2016, which is very, very new for me. And this edition was printed in October 25th, or October 2025, which means it's like 3 months old. Very, very new. So you can see it's modern. It's a very nice printing. On the edge, it just says Bob. The end papers are very are illustrated. Got some like fairy tale type coloring. I really like the printing and the look of this book. Most of the other books I have, like here, this is a stainless steel, just old, fun art, but then the back is so it's very nice. They are doing a new printing of this. Who is it? Saga Press is doing a new printing of this whole series. I believe the second book is out now, and the third book comes out in March. So I will be probably buying the new printings, which is not something I ever do. This whole series, when I'm done, might be as much as like half of this bookshelf. So let's get right into it. What is We Are Legion, We Are Bob? Bob Johansson is a tech millionaire. He's not a billionaire, just rich enough he doesn't have to really worry about money or anything ever again. He decides he wants to, he signs up for a cryogenic lab, one of those places where when you die, they take and freeze your body, in this case, just the head, and freeze it and you set up a trust fund to pay for it, continuing care once you are dead. Therefore, in the future, once technology has come along enough to regenerate your body or cure the disease, they can go and reanimate you and can make you continue. Bob's all for this. He signs up. That's how the book opens. He goes to a science fiction convention because he's a sci-fi nerd, and at the sci-fi convention, he gets hit by a bus. He wakes up in the future, it's 100-something years in the future, where Faith, which is an acronym that stands for something, basically a Christian nationalist party, has had a coup in America and taken over. So the whole world situation looks completely different. And this organization, Faith, has decided, once you are dead, you are dead. All this whole cryogenic stuff, it's all bullcrap, and basically becomes property of the government. Bob finds himself copied onto a machine and said, hey, we have some tests for you to see if you will be capable of doing this mission. Basically, this mission is to create a von Neumann probe. Von Neumann probes are basically probes sent out into space, and once they hit some other asteroid or planet or what have you, they go and they scavenge for materials and they create 3D printers. They have 3D printers, which they then use to create copies of themselves or any other machinery which they may need. All sorts of different factional stuff happens where different factions inside Faith are arguing with each other. Some of them want Bob to go out with this whole von Neumann probe. Some of them don't. They end up sending Bob out as a probe, and the guy who's running it basically gives Bob the ability to override all of the systems put in place by Faith, which would allow him to be controlled. So Bob goes and is sent out. Bob lands at Epsilon Eridani. He creates copies of himself, and these copies then go out and do all sorts of different things. All of these copies, when he creates a new ship, the new ship a new computer, and this new computer, he just makes a copy of himself and sends it to him. And they all have to create new names. Due to some reason that's not fully explained, they all have different personalities. They're all Bob, but they're all different versions of Bob. Some of them are more loners, some of them are more funny and jokesters, some of them get more interested in one thing or another. Which then allows Bob to make copies, these copies to go and do other things. And these other copies to be different people, not just a different instance of himself, which will then slowly change into a different person over time. Well, I mean, that does happen. But also, they have some differences at the beginning to make this differentiation. So then, we follow these different Bobs as they travel throughout the universe. In this book, they stay pretty close. We have, most of the people end up deciding to leave. Bill decides to stay at Epsilon Eridani, and he spends his time doing research and making different plans for different things, trying to figure out how things work. There is one planet, Ragnarok, at Epsilon Eridani, that is possible being a spot where humans can live, but currently is not capable of life. And so Bill is trying to find asteroids with water and send those to Ragnarok to make its goals, making it habitable. He's also working on subspace communications, which basically allows you to have faster than light communication, where if you're in one solar system and someone else is in a different solar system, light years away, you guys can talk. There's not a whole lot explained. This is part of the gobbledygook that all good sci-fi has, where it's not explained, it just sort of works, which is what makes science fiction science fiction, because if there's no fiction in there, then it's not science fiction, it's just fiction. Milo goes out to Omicron 2, Eridani, and he finds double planets there that contain life. So double planets, these are twin planets that orbit each other like the Earth and the Moon do. But they're both planets. They're both very similar in size. And they both contain life. One of them is very habitable, and the other one is mostly habitable. There is life on there, but it's not definitely not as nice. Milo then goes and makes copies of himself in order to some of them stay at this planet. These planets trying to make them habitable. And Milo then goes on. Riker and Homer return to Earth. They want to see what's going on there, and they can then communicate back to Bill at Epsilon Eridani. Soon after they get back to Earth, they gain the subspace connection in order to communicate with Bill. And they find Earth has been irradiated from a nuclear war, and there's only few pockets left of humanity left alive, about 15 million people. All sorts of political stuff happens between these different groups trying to figure out how to get Riker's help to get off planet. And Riker then spends several years going around making copies of himself and making different colony ships so that they can get humans from Earth to planet. And by the time they get there and the colony ships are made, they have learned about these twin planets. One of them is named Vulcan. I forget what the other one's called. Where they're habitable and they can just fly there, and they'll have a little bit of trouble getting started, obviously, but they should be able to breathe right away and all that stuff, so it'll be a whole lot easier. Bob, the original Bob, travels to Delta Eridani. He finds a planet capable of life, that has life, and actually has intelligent life. The intelligent life's at the Stone Tools stage and are dying. You could tell that they seemed to be bigger at one point, and now they're getting killed off by, he calls them gorillaoids. They're like gorillas, scarier, and they hunt these, he calls them Deltans. That's the name because it's Delta Eridani. And so he decides since this is the only intelligent life that they've discovered so far, let's go and save them. And so he comes down as a drone and communicates with one of them, and basically kind of acts like a god. Basically says, "This is some technology to help you." He picks up. They are no longer at the site where they have flint, and they need flint in order to make their tools. So he brings them some flint, and then says, "We're going to go back to this area that's better." And he brings them on an exodus, on a journey out of this land onto a new land, which was their old land, where they were capable, except now there's a bunch of gorilloids attacking them, and he creates some flying machines that come and attack these gorilloids. And since he's given these Deltans this technology, or helped them improve their technology in order to fight them off. That's what these Deltans look like. Linus goes to Epsilon Indi, and when he gets there, he finds a probe which has gone insane. It was the Australian AI, which we learn early in the book as they are getting Bob and seeing if he's capable, that apparently about 80% of the human brains that are copied over into AI don't do very well. They go insane. And the Australian one has gone insane. The Australian one starts to attack him. He takes out his ship, so he's not able to kill him. He knows this Australian guy is trying to hurt him, and copies the AI onto his own ship, makes another ship, puts this guy into VR, so he thinks he is a sailor on a ship, because that's the only place he can be sane. And that's about as far as we get with Linus in this book. Milo, after he finds the planet with, finds the system with Vulcan, the habitable planet, he goes to another system and gets attacked by Medeiros, who is the Brazilian drone. This Brazilian drone finds him, attacks him, kills him, but not before Milo can realize that he's dying and send this information back to Bill. Once the information gets to Bill, Bill makes 8 copies of himself, sends 8 Bobs back to where Milo died, and they do a pretty good job of taking out Medeiros, but at least one of the Medeiros escaped. And out of the 8, only 2 survive. One sends a backup of himself before he explodes, and the other one survives, realizes it would take 13 years to get back, just sends a copy to Bill so that they can go and regroup and send out more to go back after this system that Medeiros has taken over. And then Mario goes to Beta Hydri, and he finds a planet, or a solar system, that's already been scavenged for all of the material that he needs in order to create copies of himself. And he lands on a planet. He finds a spaceship that has been destroyed, crash landed, with ingots. So obviously this someone else has already come and tried to collect the stuff. Bobs have roamers, which are little tools that they send out to go and do things that are automated, but controlled by Bob. And he finds these ants, is what he calls them, that are controlled. They do the same thing as the roamers do, but they're not from him. They're from some other alien technology. They are dead, but as he's scanning, they manage to take that energy of his scan to come back to life and start doing things. And so Mario is then heading back with this technology. Well, all this is happening. This subspace, faster than light technology, has not been delivered to everyone. Bill comes up with it pretty soon after everyone else has left, but some people are traveling faster and faster, and so different people get into the subspace quicker than others. So the ones in the nearby systems have it and can communicate with Bill as things are going on. Khan, and that's the group, he's one of the guys who survived. He's the group of 8 that went after Medeiros. All of them had the subspace because they were shipped out from Bill. Other Bobs get them at different points. Oh, and at the end, all of the first ship of humans, this first colony ship, lands on Vulcan. So the book ends with these two things. The humans making it to Vulcan. Also, Mario, one version of Bob, finding other intelligent life. At the end, Bob's in a bunch of different places. He has the Australian guy who is not a threat, who is living in VR, virtual reality, thinking he's on a boat. He has that with him. He has Medeiros, who's the Brazilian guy who's made several copies, unsure about if he got knocked out or all. Humans making it to the first colony planet of Vulcan, and their alien spaceships that have come. That's where book one ends. Definitely a spot where you want to continue reading on. A couple other things about this book. So one of the things Bob does before he makes copies of himself is he makes a virtual reality in order for him to exist in. So all the Bobs have different VRs, and since they're different personalities, a lot of them make them in different ways in order to be, like one of them is in an airship that's floating above Paris. One of them is just a house. Some of them are like big tree houses. All of these different places where Bob might be interested in existing. But I really like that idea. I don't know if it's original, but if you were to wake up and you were to be a machine, since you are a human, or at the very least, you are a human brain copied into a machine that thinks it's human, or has all the memories of being human, that is being embodied, having a body with which you interact with the world. How would it be like to interact in the world in a non-embodied way? How easy would that be to exist where you don't have your arms and legs to move? You can't see or smell. I mean, you have this information coming in, these visual streams, but it's like, but if you were to create VR and you create a house and you have a desk that has a computer and you can have all your information come in, be as if on this computer, and you can type in the keyboard, or you can just send the stuff over with your mind. There are ways to communicate with this in a way where you are embodied virtually, but at least that's the way that you can exist. I don't know. Maybe I'm not explaining that well. But I do like that concept of an AI having VR. I haven't read a whole lot of books with AIs, especially not a whole lot that have AIs that were made from human. I know that it's definitely a thing. It's definitely not original to him. But I think the idea of the VR, of the virtual reality, having a fake body in a fake space, I don't know. I like it. It doesn't have a whole lot interesting to do with the plot, at least not at this moment, besides the Australian having a VR, because the Australian guy can't handle being an AI, can't handle being in space. So when they find him and they make a virtual reality for him, they make him a ship because he was a sailor before he got turned into an AI. And so now he can just be on the ship and do all the things that he thinks he needs to do in order to live in a way that's real for him. That's the only time it really comes in as a plot point. There's also some other philosophical ideas that he plays with and doesn't really... He brings up these ideas, and this whole book, I mean, is playing with these ideas. He doesn't have any great answers for them, but he brings them up in I guess the book are answered more in the book, in the writing of the book, than in the author just giving you answers. So Bob is having this crisis. I don't know if you can call it a crisis. He seems to answer these things pretty quickly. But where other people might have an existential crisis and go crazy, these are the questions that Bob is asking himself. I had 3 issues that bothered me. Was I conscious? Could I actually consider myself to be alive? And was I still Bob? Philosophers have been going on and on about this thing for centuries, but now for me it was personal. I thought back to all the arguments about Turing tests and thinking machines. Was I nothing more than a Chinese room? Could my entire behavior be explained as a set of scripted responses to given inputs? This was the easiest uncertainty to answer. So for those of you who don't know, the Chinese room is, let's imagine you are put into a room and you get little slips put into them. And you don't speak Chinese, but on these slips are Chinese characters. And you have a book or a selection of books, and you go through and you find these Chinese characters and you read your way through the books until you match up Chinese characters. And it says, okay, if this is the output. And then you copy this output, and that gets sent out. So you have no comprehension, no understanding of what's going on. Input's coming in, you send the output, but you don't know what it means. You don't know what the input means, you don't know what the output means. And is that alive? Is that what humans are? Is that what life is? Like a sunflower turns towards the sun. Does that know what's going on, or is these just things that happen? This is answered right away. It's like, well, a Chinese room has no understanding, has no inner dialogue. I do. For that matter, Descartes had his famous cogito ergo sum, which I believe is the I think, therefore I am. But Thomas had added to it with, since I doubt, I think. Since I think, I exist. Well, I was certainly full of doubt. Doubt implied self-awareness, and that's a concern for one's future. So I was a conscious entity, barring evidence to the contrary. Was I alive? Since no one had yet managed to define life rigorously, this was going to be a fun one. As the speaker at that long-ago panel in Vegas had pointed out, fire has most of the qualities of life, but it is not alive. According to Dr. Landers, I would be able to reproduce via printer-based auto factories. I certainly responded to stimuli, acted with self-interest. The claim that life had to be carbon-based was chauvinistic and narrow-minded. So yeah, I could consider myself alive. Bob is a secular humanist. He doesn't believe in anything besides what's going on in the here and now. No spiritual, no God, no none of that other stuff. Which is where this whole, the claim that life would have to be carbon-based is chauvinistic and narrow-minded. I mean, the whole concept that you could go and upload your brain to a computer and then that computer could think. I guess in a world where that is possible, that is a world where life, or at very least consciousness, is not just carbon-based. Now the big one. Who was I? Was I Bob, or was Bob dead? In engineering terms, what was the metric used to ascribe Bobhood? Bob was more than a hunk of meat. Bob was a person. A person was a history, a set of desires, thoughts, goals, and opinions. Bob was the accumulation of all that Bob had been for 31 years. The meat was dead, but the things that made Bob different from a chipmunk were alive. In me. I am Bob. Or at the very least, the important parts of Bob. With this last thought, a huge weight lifted off me. So, he has these questions. Am I conscious? Am I alive? Am I Bob? And he has some answers. I don't know that I like his answers, but his answers, if all of his answers are correct, then this world is theoretically possible. If, for example, a computer could copy a brain, but that brain couldn't be alive and exist, could not think, well, then this book couldn't exist. Or if what it meant to be alive and to think could only exist in carbon, maybe they could make a copy of it if they were to print out another brain that was carbon-based like we are. Maybe then, maybe that could happen, but this book of Bob couldn't happen. He also deals with what does it mean, how does it feel to wake up as a copy? I snapped back to full consciousness. The backup process, as always, felt like the closest thing to sleep that I had experienced since being reborn in the 22nd century. I activated my VR out of habit before getting on with the day's business, but instead of my rich, detailed library, I found myself in a blue room, with no window, and a hard, indeterminate floor. Uh-oh, I queried my serial number. HIC 16537-1. Built in Epsilon Eridani. The Hipparcos catalog number made it clear. I'm a copy of a copy. Crap. I tried to console myself by noting that I was still a replicant, just a different one. It didn't help as much as it should have. Well, there's no point in sitting around and getting all bent out of shape. So he brings up the idea of what does it mean to wake up as a copy. You create a backup. One of them is reloaded on the same computer with the same setup. Feels exactly the same. This other one, which is the copy, which is identical in every way, except now it's on a new computer. What does that feel like? And he sort of plays with it, but then his answer, well, there's no point in sitting around and getting all bent out of shape. I would have liked it if there was a little more to it than that. And basically he does it right here, and then all these other copies, we don't feel what it's like to awaken as a copy after this point. This is it. He brings it up because, of course, you have to bring it up. His solution, not super ideal. But he does play with these ideas, but it's generally just a book of what if you can explore the universe, make different copies of yourself. That's generally, he's playing with these philosophical ideas, but not super deep, which I guess I can't really complain about. It is a good book. I have been enjoying it. One other comment to make, and I'm still unsure at this moment how I feel about it. All of his characters feel alike. All of his voices. All of these different versions of Bob have the same voice. When you're reading a book and you switch from one character's perspective to another, sometimes you're doing it third person. You're looking at it from the outside. This person thought this. Blah, 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 blah. Right? And if you do that and you're saying, Bob thought this, then Bill thought that. Having the one voice isn't an issue because, of course, it's the one narrator looking down in third person. But when it comes to first person, and you have a book where it jumps from first person perspective to other first person perspective, you expect different voices, the words to sound different, the way that it's talking to sound different. Here, all of the different Bobs, whether it be Bill or Mario or any of these other people, sound alike. And I can't tell if this is good or bad. I have not read any of their book by Dennis E. Taylor. If he wrote other books that weren't about Bob, about one person creating different copies of themselves, if his voice was the same between those different characters, I think I would probably have an issue. I think that's the question. Is he doing it on purpose or not? If he's doing it on purpose, and all these different Bobs that have these slightly different personalities, but they're all the same. The differences in personality is not extreme. It's like this person's more introverted than that one. This person doesn't like this other person. This one's a little more druggy, blah blah. Like tiny little differences that maybe like two twins have. It's like, whoa, well, this one's a little happier, but it's not even that different because they're the same person up to this point where they get copied. So it could be brilliant because it's one person, and maybe as the books go on and you have two people who diverged quite early and they changed, or one person and they make copies and copies, and so this copy, like they don't have a progenitor Bob until, like the original Bob. Like if they just two different tracks, maybe those voices are going to sound different. Maybe it's going to be brilliant as voices just slowly change over time. Or maybe it's that this guy has a great idea, but his writing isn't quite up to snuff in the way that you might want it to be when you're jumping around and you have 8 different characters and you want them to all sound slightly different. I don't know. That might be nitpicking. It probably is nitpicking. Anyway, We Are Legion, We Are Bob, by Dennis E. Taylor. It's a great book. Especially for modern books. He does make a couple of jokes to sci-fi that I'm not a huge fan of. Like Riker calls himself Riker because he's number 2. There's Bob 1, which is Big Bob, and there's Bob 2, and the second guy names himself Riker because of Star Trek, and number 2 in Star Trek is Riker. And then there's Homer, who names himself after Homer Simpson, and for a little while there, makes himself in VR as Homer and does a bunch of stupid jokes. I'm not the biggest fan of that, of having books that comment on pop culture. He doesn't do it a whole lot, but he does it a little bit. But generally, this is a fun book, a fun series, at least so far. I will be buying the next book and the books after that, and probably spending way more money on it than I should, because they are nice copies, and since I have the first book in this printing, I should pick up the other ones as well. Anyway, thanks for watching.